Hi everyone, welcome to this week's edition of Midweek Market Update. I'm Ashley Rosser with Victory Fiduciary, and today obviously what we want to get into certainly is some of the market movements that we have seen since Monday. So you have probably all heard that Pfizer announced overnight before Monday that their new vaccine is likely to have a 90% efficacy rate in preventing the COVID-19 virus, and markets absolutely just kind of went bonkers on Monday with this idea that we finally maybe have a vaccine that will be capable to kind of help us get back to regular life. And so what we saw on Monday was very interesting. We saw a pretty significant rotation, a sector rotation, where we saw money kind of flowing out of what has done very well for these past 6 months, mainly and specifically technology. We saw a lot of money outflowing from there, flowing into some areas that have really continued to kind of be beat up throughout this pandemic, specifically going into areas like airlines, cruise lines, hotels. Again, these areas that have been waiting on us being able to kind of get back to normal life. So we saw a very rapid influx into these areas, and then we saw, like I said, just outflows of money kind of leaving from a lot of these like stay-at-home technology areas, with the hopes that maybe this was a sign that things would, we would be getting back to normal very quickly. So it's interesting though. So Monday afternoon, significant shareholder withdrew 5.6 million shares of Pfizer stock Monday afternoon. So we always ask ourselves, who knew what when? And then it came out after that while we do have this vaccine, which will hopefully have very good efficiency, it needs to be stored at -75 degrees Celsius in order to keep it stable. And so the issue, and so this is what the CDC was talking about yesterday, in terms of mass production and mass inoculation, we don't really have a plan for that now because we don't have storage facilities available to keep the vaccine stable. So good news that we do is we've made progress with the vaccine, but somewhat not as good news is I'm not really sure that we know exactly how we'd be able to mass produce and then get it out. So that sector rotation we saw on Monday, we did see it kind of begin to carry over into Tuesday as well. Today things seem more apart for the course. We don't see as much sector rotation. We see the technology is up, and the Dow has been down for most of the day, which the Dow is what had really surged on Monday. But it's interesting. So the S&P 500, so we also saw a very nice pop in the S&P 500, although it was a very targeted rally that we saw. So we already mentioned that we saw areas of moving and sector rotation. But if you look at within the S&P 500, if you look at what companies on Friday were beating the index, and then what companies on Monday were also beating the index, only 25 companies out of that entire index were doing that. Again, just to kind of show you that Monday's rally was really disjointed kind of from the rest of what we've been seeing. So very interesting movement certainly that we saw. And again, I'm just going to kind of show you this. So this is a candlestick chart of the S&P 500, and this is going back through May. And so again, September and October has been a very I call them sloppy trading months. So we hit these highs up September 1, and then it's really just been kind of almost like the ocean waves there going. So then here's going to be Monday's price action, where we did get above all-time highs again, although we couldn't hold them. So we didn't hold it. We actually saw a pretty steady sell-off Monday afternoon. And then here we are here, and again, it looks like today's action, we're not going to be able to get back above that as well. Relative strength, though, kind of holding steady. We're in the 60s here. So this is good. So for the market, certainly for the short term, markets certainly seem like they could be very bullish in nature, meaning that we could continue to see prices to kind of rise. We have our portfolios allocated, assuming that that's the case, although we do still have some hedges in place. And I say that if you didn't like how this felt here, then it means that you probably have a little too much risk in your portfolio still. So we've been kind of making some tweaks and changes to our portfolios really since this all kind of started to change. And so we did add some allocations in some different areas last week. So one of the areas, so I haven't spent a lot of time kind of showing you on an individual fund level, kind of what are some of the things that we look at, that we see? How do we make determinations about entry specifically? Because that's really a challenge. You know, for an investor to have success, it's very simple. You want to buy low and sell high. Sounds really simple. Okay, well, that doesn't seem that hard. Well, actually, though, it can be pretty challenging because you have to be able to take the emotion out of your investing and be able to look at numbers and make a determination. Now, when I say sell high, you don't necessarily have to sell it the highest that it ever was, but you want that fund to be higher than it was when you bought it. And if you can do that consistently over the long term, you will be able to make money and be a successful investor. And so this is our innovative tech fund. And so I just want to show you kind of how this works. Now this fund has just been on a tirade since March. And so you can see, though, this was back in September. It had a pretty steep correction right down to the 50-day moving average. Now at that time, there were still a lot of headwinds that we saw. And so we didn't make any changes to our allocations there. Here, again, we had that nice run up and then that correction. Then we had a significant uptick here. This was after the election, so after it was kind of decided that we thought that it looked like Biden would likely secure the presidency, but that the Senate and the House were going to remain split. The market really liked that. And so markets took off. So here we are. Here's our innovative tech fund. Really, for the past couple days, saw a lot of money outflowing from it. Not unexpected, because remember, we said that money was leaving areas of technology, kind of going to some of these areas that were beaten up. Came right back down to its 50-day. And so what we're talking this week was, so is this a good opportunity then? We really like this position. We've been looking for a good opportunity to maybe add to a little more exposure to this position. So here's some of the things that we look at. So number one, this is one of the programs that we use. It kind of helps us put all of our technicals together. And so fund score is still almost a 5 at 4.92. So that's a good thing, that even though it's had a pretty sharp correction over the past 2 days, where it was down almost 9% in 2 days. And so you might say, oh, that sounds horrible. Well, for me, I was thinking this is great because this is a short-term correction. This looks like it was most likely emotional reaction within the market with this short-term sector rotation. It looks like we're not going to have a vaccine tomorrow. So much of what was good for this fund on Friday is going to be good for this fund for the foreseeable future. And so we look at here, so we're still in a positive trend. When we look at our relative strength, we're still in a buy signal. We look at something called X's and O's. I'm going to show you the next chart there. X's mean that prices are rising, and O's mean that generally the prices of the fund are falling, and so we should be watching that. Overbought, oversold, -2%. So this is a big deal. So this fund is oversold. We've seen a lot. There was periods where this specific fund here was overbought at over 100%. That really means that for the time being, there might not be a whole lot of opportunity to be adding new allocations to it. So right here, we're at an oversold area. Again, these are all things that are showing this could be a good entry for this fund. Now, this looks, I know it looks complicated, but actually once you kind of get the hang of it, it's not. So this is a point and figure chart. It's another one of the technicals that we look at. And so you can see as prices are rising, as prices are closing above these numbers here. So intraday movements, it doesn't matter. And these are the numbers showing us this is how much movement must happen to either record an X, meaning that prices close up more to fill in another box, or prices close low enough that we will come back down and fill in an O. And so it tells us is supply or demand in control. And we want to be very clear when we're taking a new position over who has control at the time. Are there more buyers or are there more sellers at the time for that fund? And so here we can see this looks like we're going to be adding a couple of X's after today's movement. Again, these are all reassuring signs. So this is our trend line. We want to make sure that we're trending above this line here, and we're doing that very nicely, as you can kind of see here. So these are all ways of kind of knowing, should we be considering maybe adding. Our target was to get to 10% for this specific fund. We're at 5% right now. And so after today, it's likely that we're going to be able to take those extra positions. And so I just kind of wanted to go through a couple minutes though and kind of show you a little bit of the back process of, how do we make these decisions? I can tell you that it's not by like reading what CNBC is saying or what my social media feed is saying. It is very much so rules and math based. And again, this is only just one part of what we're looking at when we make these decisions. I just thought, as I was doing my research yesterday for this, I thought it might be helpful for you to kind of get to see a little snapshot of what we do. As we continue with these videos and I'm able to move into our studio, these charts I can actually pull up live to show you on our screen, so it'll be, I think, a little more beneficial for you. I just want to make a note though about emotional investing. So I came home from work on Monday and I was kind of just scrolling through my feed and I saw 3 friends, completely all unrelated, and their advice was they were telling their friends, buy Pfizer now, don't ask questions, you'll thank me later. And I kind of chuckled to myself thinking, well, really, if you were going to give advice to buy Pfizer, then you should have done it Friday before anybody knew anything. By the time it hit your social media feed, by the time it hits the news, by the time everybody's saying buy it, you've probably, at least for now, missed your window. And now, maybe you sit back. So let's say if you're interested in buying a company like that, well, you watch the technicals, you wait to see how overbought, oversold other areas, and then maybe wait for there to be a little bit of a drag or a little bit of a snafu with the vaccine kind of coming through. That might give you a better entry point, but certainly, because now you're buying Pfizer high and then just hoping that it will continue to rise without maybe having the technicals to back it up. So that's just my 2 cents. Again, if you are looking at your portfolio, I think that in the short term, we do feel somewhat bullish about the market, and so we're kind of making some allocations. But I would say that we are still extremely deviated from our moving averages now. What happened, that price action that we saw last week after the election, where we saw a significant increase in market inflows, as well as kind of what happened beginning this week. Markets, at least on the short term, are overbought, so I'd be really careful about maybe adding too many new positions right now, unless you can really drill down and find some areas that maybe are attractive from a technical standpoint. So I thank you for joining us. As always, my email is ashleyr@victoryfiduciary.com. I'd love to get your feedback or questions or ideas for our next video. I'm hoping that very soon we'll be coming to you from our new studio. So have a great night, and we will speak with you soon. Thanks.